just for starters, I'm curious to hear that when people approaching you and when you're in this sort of, you know, initial phases of communication, how do you describe yourself? What do you tell about yourself when it comes to presenting yourself to another person?
I mean, I was just at the doctor the other day and they were like, well, what do you do for a living? And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I'm a web developer, a graphic designer. I'm an award-winning author. I do ghostwriting for different clients. I'm working inside the military. I'm a keynote speaker. So just kind of
Yeah.
just a lot of irons in the fire at the moment and just kind of dabbling in what I enjoy and what fascinates me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And um, you know, what was the whole process of you developing interest in those areas? Like, because I assume, it sort of all happened gradually, and you've been just getting involved into different spheres at different points in life. So, what was this timeline for you?
Well, when I was born, I was always a creative. Like my parents, and I still have them. They're in a
Mm,
folder over here.
nice.
But like drawings from when I was like 3 and 4 years old of me like drawing eagles and tigers and lions and stuff like that.
Mm,
So I always loved drawing. And one of the things that I did is early on in high school and then also just even in middle school, I started taking a lot of just art classes because I thought that I wanted to draw comic books.
mm,
That was like my dream growing up because I loved reading them, loved the characters, and I was like, oh, I want to write stories and do comics and all of that. And the problem was is like during the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, they said, oh, there's no money to be made in art
yeah.
whatsoever. Like that was the whole trope at the time was being a starving artist. But luckily, by the time that I had graduated high school, there were all these advanced placement courses for art, and so I was doing that.
Mm,
And I ended up opting out of like my last 2 years of high school, here in the United
mm,
States, so that I could go to like kind of this junior community college to learn advertising design,
oh, nice.
which incorporated the early aspects of graphic design and
Mm,
creating logos and everything else. So I started that, got a scholarship for Oklahoma State University where I went to college, but I needed a way to pay for it, so I joined the military. And so my life just kind of took like this weird turn of events where I was like kind of this creative guy, but I was also kind of like had this warrior aspect to me. And even while I was doing all the art classes, I was like involved in martial arts and mixed martial arts. And so there was always just kind of this play between the two different worlds where you had kind of the artsy fartsy side of me, and then you had kind of the warrior aspect of it all. And so when the terrorist attacks happened on September 11th, 2001, that's when my life really took a kind
Mm,
of more of a dramatic turn. And I ended up in combat theaters in Iraq and Afghanistan. If you've seen there's a new movie out called Warfare.
mm,
It was about Ramadi during
yeah.
2006, and I was actually in that battle, just on a different side of the city.
Wow.
So worked with SEAL Team 5 and a lot of just different guys during that time period, and the movie's very accurate. So
Mhm.
and then I finished up college and then finally moved into taking a career as like a junior graphic designer at like almost 30 when I was 30 years old. And it was like, everyone's like, what have you been doing for the last decade? And I was like, oh man, my bad. I've been fighting wars. Like that's been my thing. So that happened. And then eventually, I ended up working as a graphic designer for a geopolitical intelligence firm. And when I was in that role, I started climbing up the ranks. I understood, the military and the analytical side because of my time in the military. But so they needed somebody with an analytical brain who could take like what their analysts were telling us and then create that graphically. So like, let's say we were tracking cartel movements in Mexico and they needed to show that graphically. That's where I would come in. And so while I was doing that, I was always grown up a huge metalhead,
Mm,
and I was big into August Burns Red, which Jake Luers is the lead singer there. And so from that point, what I wanted to do was get involved in some type of mental health. And I saw that Jake was doing that
Mhm.
because a lot of us were coming back from the wars and there were starting to be issues that we saw, as far as mental
Mhm.
health and post-traumatic stress and moral injury, transition disorders, the whole nine yards. And eventually, I joined on as one of the first people to Heart Support, which is his nonprofit. I got certified in crisis response, trauma care, suicide prevention, evidence-based management of suicidal patients, became a peer certified mental health specialist, and just worked throughout that and really developed my writing craft during that time period with a friend of mine who is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. And I wanted to pick up the craft because it tied back to that comic book stuff. I was like, oh, I want to write comics. And so just became fascinated with the whole aspect of writing
Mhm.
and telling stories. And so I got better and better and better at it. And then I jumped over to this platform called Medium. And I still write there and have about 50,000 followers there now that read my work, or 50,000 readers, not followers. So they read my work there, and then that just kind of opened doors, and agents started courting me, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I went back to my friend who's the author and
Mhm.
was like, "What do I do? Who do I sign with? What should I know?" And then signed with an agent, put together a book proposal, got a book deal out, and it was about my time in Iraq and Afghanistan and my whole journey there. And that went on to win six literary awards, and it's been out for about 2.5 years now, and continues to do well. And then during that time period, I was speaking as well too. So usually when you put out a book or everything else, like it opens up venues and opportunities. So I just started speaking a lot on just different topics. A lot of them recently have just, the big thing that the business industry really loves right now is like former soldiers and former special
Yeah.
operations forces operators who, have this like grit and resiliency and
Yeah.
what can you teach us about business? So I think the last couple times I've gotten hired, it's been like business related stuff. But I have another event coming up in September that's more mental health focused. But most of my speaking revolves around like military related stuff now, and I'm working a lot with the veteran community here in Colorado Springs, and then just beyond to just kind of continue to get veterans better past like this kind of victim mentality and into kind of more strength and resiliency. So that's kind of how, that's a very long-winded way of like how the dominoes all kind of fell in place. And eventually now I run my own business. It does web development, graphic design, ghostwriting, all that stuff.